Saludos, gloria a Dios. Que lo que es, mi gente? This is your brother David Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. This presentation is titled American Patriots of the Spanish West Indies, Santo Domingo, Cuba, and the Spanish contribution to the American Revolution. Before the formation of the United States, Britain ruled the 13 colonies. Under the British, oppression, extreme taxation, and slavery was the norm. But against all odds, Americans rose up in revolution and freed themselves from their former British masters. The American Revolution sparked a movement of independence and patriotism, which led to what we know today as the United States of America. With Britain once being a powerful empire, who was it that helped the Americans defeat their oppressors? The Spanish crown, which established its presence in the Americas before Britain, would have been the only other power strong enough to help liberate the Americans from Britain. But did they? Did the Spanish crown help the Americans defeat Britain? If so, what would have been the role of the average Spaniard in the American Revolution? What was Hispaniola's role in all of this? Stay tuned. This is the Hispaniola History Channel, American Patriots of the Spanish West Indies. The purpose of this presentation is to explain Spain's interest in joining the American Revolution. We're going to highlight the strength of the Spanish armada in the West Indies before and during the American Revolution, the Spanish West Indies' contributions to the American Revolution, including the average citizen in Spanish America, the free colored regiments loyal to the Spanish crown. We will cover all of that. But first, prior to 1776 and the American Revolution, the Spanish crown already had a free black and mulatto battalion stationed in places like Cuba and Santo Domingo. From the book Ever Faithful, page 83, it highlights Spain's loyal black and mulatto soldiers. It highlights a quote from the King of Spain praising the mulattoes and Negroes in the Cuban militias. Quote from King Philip himself, the King of Spain, 1714. He says, "Considering them my vassals," and he declared that they should be given good treatment as they deserve. The battalion of Negroes benefited Spain as assertions of equality, rights, and citizenship based on military service claims heard throughout the Americas during the Age of Revolution. So this is how many Negroes and people of color gained their freedom under the Spanish crown. So Spain had a regiment of Negroes way before the American Revolution. And in terms of the Spanish help towards the American Revolution, here's a source from mountvernon.org highlighting the Treaty of Irañez, George Washington's Mount Vernon, where George Washington acknowledged the Spanish military support for France during the American War of Independence in return of French support for the Spanish repossession of Gibraltar. Source here, teachinghistory.org, says, in terms of Spain's motivation to help the American colonists was driven by a desire to regain land it had lost to Britain and with other European powers. Spain had much territory here in the Americas and had lost it due to wars with Britain. So they had an interest in this revolution of the Americas. Encyclopedia.com says, Spanish participation in the American Revolution. It says Spain played a single role in the American Revolution as a supply source for munitions and other material for the Americas. Let's go into the source, the Museum of American Revolution. What was the impact of Spain's involvement? It says here, along with their military support, Spain supplied the revolutionaries with desperately needed arms, blankets, shoes, and currency. So this is highlighting a major contribution from arms and guns and to things to like blankets and shoes. So every facet of what a soldier would need to go into battle, Spain was providing that for the Americans. Here's a source here, Spanish Borderland Studies, Part 7, the Spanish, French, Dutch, and American Patriots of the West Indies. during the American Revolution. So here's a source that specifically is dealing with this topic. Let's see what this source has to say. Page 11 it highlights how the Spanish crown required for every Spanish citizen in its colonies to contribute money to help fund the American Revolution and war effort against Britain. It says here that each Spanish male over 18 was asked to contribute 2 pesos, and each Indian or mixed blood over 18 to contribute 1 peso. And there's many references found in the Cuban records to verify this, and much of this help was coming from the Spanish West Indies. So folks living in Cuba, Puerto Rico, Santo Domingo, if you had a wage and were receiving income, you were required to contribute some of your income to the war effort benefiting the Americans. So here you have an example of your average Hispanic citizen in the West Indies contributing money to the American Revolution. So what else besides money were they contributing? But before we get into that, let's get into the powerful Spanish armada that was stationed mainly in places like the West Indies. And, not to sidetrack, because a lot of times when we speak of the Spanish armada, we somehow form a mental image in our head like, oh, all these powerful ships are somehow parked on the shores of Spain. But in actuality, during these times, the vast majority of the Spanish armada was in the West Indies and places like Mexico and South America. It was here in the Americas, over in the Philippines. So let's keep that clear. But let's get into the source, page 11. Over 20,526 Spanish Americans enlisted to fight in the American Revolution, including 2,754 from Puerto Rico alone. That's major. The Spanish crown also contributed 131 naval ships and 40,000 mariners. These are huge contributions here. Some of the Spanish armada ships came from Hispaniola, with names like Santo Domingo, San Juan, and San Nicolas de Bari. So some of the ships that the Spanish were contributing not only had names like Santo Domingo, but they were actually coming from Santo Domingo and contributed over 40,000 mariners. Now, this is a big, sizable force coming from the West Indies, the Spanish West Indies, who are contributing their time, effort, and putting their lives on the line for the Americans. So to recap and summarize what we just learned, that Spain was a major contributor to the American Revolution, with funding and supplies coming mainly from the Spanish territories in America, not Europe. Every citizen in the Spanish territories were required by the crown to contribute financially to the American Revolution and war effort against Britain. Over 60,000 Spanish soldiers and mariners, including hundreds of Spanish armada ships, were active during the American Revolution. Most of the warships came from Santo Domingo and the Spanish West Indies. That's that, and this is the American Patriots of the Spanish West Indies, Santo Domingo, Cuba, and the Spanish contributions to the American Revolution. I hope you guys enjoy this information, and hopefully you continue to support this channel. Until then, this is your brother David Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. Good night. God bless.